Oh, okay.
No, doesn't sound like it. Good evening. The Southland Common Council meeting has started. I would first like to ask the council that when we are speaking, make sure that you speak directly in the mic, as there are problems with people online hearing us speak. So if you could speak directly into the mic. I would like to call Monday meeting to order. Clerk Jones, I believe you would like to make some comments regarding the link for this meeting and other expectations.
Yes. Good evening, members of the public. For audio quality, we will be muting everyone not speaking by default to maintain good audio quality for council members as well as yourselves. If you would like to speak during the meeting on specific agenda items, please submit your request to speak in the chat, and directions to do so are also located in the chat. We ask that you provide your name, your full name and address, as those are required for all speakers at in-person meetings. If you would like to be called on during the meeting to provide public input, again, please insert your name and address in the chat, and you will be called on during the relevant time for public input. You will be given 5 minutes to speak during public input. For citizens that wish to speak during the privilege of the floor, please insert the following into the chat during that time, and the council president will call on you. And you will be given 3 minutes to speak during privilege of the floor. Please be sure to unmute yourself prior to giving your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to also say that disrespectful, rude, or disruptive speech or actions will not be tolerated. Such speech and/or actions, as well as verbal attacks on any person, may result in the individual, without notice, forfeiting the remainder of his or her allotted time. At this time, we would like to welcome Apostle Edwin Newsom from Kingdom Impact Church for the invocation.
Greetings. Let's pray. In the words of Edward Mote, we quote, "Our hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and his righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but only lean on Jesus' name. On Christ, the solid rock, we stand. All other ground is sinking sand." Father, we thank you for your stability. We thank you for your wisdom. We thank you for your intellect in this meeting. We pray, Father, that you would lead us and guide us into all truth, and that you would govern us, Father, and cause us to conduct kingdom business in this room. We pray, Father, every legislation, every bill, everything that is done, Father, will be honoring and pleasing unto your name. We pray, Father, for every council person, Father, that they will have the wisdom and the knowledge and the understanding and the wherewithal to lead and to guide these are people, Father. We thank you, oh God, that you are even causing us to understand and to know who you are and why you've called us into this place. Thank you, Father, for purposes and plans and agendas that shall be set here tonight will only be under the auspices and your glorious power. And we thank you, Father, for that leading spirit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much. Clerk Jones? Oh, we get the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry. Thank you. Clerk Jones, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Davis?
Henry's here.
Councilmember Lee?
Present.
Councilmember Warner? Present. Councilmember Wax? Present. Councilmember White?
Present.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan? Councilmember Hammond?
Present.
Vice President Niskoski?
Present.
President McBride?
Present.
9 present.
Thank you. There's no report on minutes from the subcommittee. There is no special business. At this time, we will welcome Mayor James Mueller. Welcome, Mayor. for a statement of finances and general condition of the city.
Good evening, Council. Mayor James Mueller with offices on the 14th floor of this building. We'll wait a moment while we get the presentation here loaded online. But I hope you had an opportunity to meet our new city controller, Kyle Willis, who is, this is his first time working to get it uploaded, so bear with us for a moment. It appears he is not in the correct Teams meeting. If someone could send him the proper link, that could expedite things. Kyle Willis said you don't have it either.
He told me before I left, to go downtown. What's it like?
Which invite? The meeting link in the agenda is apparently not the one to follow. Is there another place to
It is.
find the link?
You have two meetings. You have the council committee meeting and you have the council meeting.
Okay,
We just sent him the council meeting.
okay, great.
The council meeting one isn't working either.
I just got on. That's fine, no one's on. I just got on. He's there.
You should have this shit worked out before you got here. Give the resignation, make sure it's there, all right?
All right, there we go. Apologies for the delay this evening. So let's get right to it. Can we go to the next slide here, Kyle? So as you know, every year we like to look at one back. It's a little delayed when you click on it. We like to look at some of the macro indicators of how we're doing as a city. And as you see in the past year, at least on the estimates from Oxford Economics, our population is growing at a faster rate than it's even growing in the past decade. Our median household income is up, per capita income is up, and our poverty rate has kind of been on a downward trajectory generally, and there you see it's roughly at the same level. We know that one of the important things that did not get continued last year was the child credit, tax credit at the federal level, and that was something that was included in the American Rescue Plan, and there was a focus, and a lot of the authors thought that it would be extended as part of a broader Build Back Better plan. Obviously, that did not make it into the final piece of legislation, and that expired, but that was credited with a lot of poverty reduction. It's critical for those with young kids, single mothers in particular. So that's something that we know is having an impact across the country, and hope that Congress takes another look at the child tax credit in the future here. Go ahead, next slide. Just want to go over some recent highlights. We have a lot of things to talk about in the neighborhoods. We have a number of recently developed plans, including in those neighborhoods that have been underserviced in the past. And thank you, Council, for passing those plans as we work through them. Of course, there's in the budget and underway now, there's plans for LaSalle Park and River Park, as well as our long-term 2045 plan. So thank you for participating in those meetings with residents and giving your input for those. And then thank you especially for the last meeting, only a week ago, the special meeting approving the bond financing for the implementation of many of these plans. So investments in our neighborhoods across the city at $34.7 million worth. Of course, last year we also saw the complete conversion of our streetlights to LEDs, although there's still some remaining, but we're very close to that full conversion. Traffic calming, there's a plan underway, some are out, and many more will be coming out this year. And then, of course, continuing with our rebuilding our streets plan that's putting historic investments into our streets, both neighborhoods and major arteries. Also, safe community for everyone. We're pleased that the wage package that council approved as part of the negotiation last year, we expect to be fully staffed this summer, which is the first time in several years where we can say that. Also, thank you to the council for bringing attention to the need for a real-time crime center and also approving the funds as part of the ARP plan. Also, a lot of news about the Behavioral Crisis Center, again, part of the ARP plan that we had that we formed together with the community, and we're pleased to get those dollars out the door. And Oaklawn is our partner that will be looking to open that up here in the coming months. Finally, we have exciting news recently about affordable housing. We received 3 tax credit projects in the city for the first time in many, many years. So we're excited that our developers put together successful proposals downstate, and the state selected those 3 tax credits. So that's exciting news moving forward. Last year, we also launched the New Neighborhood Homes Initiative, and there's more coming soon here on the financing piece that, again, were part of the American Rescue Plan that we worked on together. And then finally, you've seen in the news that various different redevelopment projects have included affordable housing components. So good news there. We know that we need housing of all types, not just affordable housing. We're a growing city again, and we need to have places for folks to go. Before we go into a quick update about where we are with the American Rescue Plan, I do want to put in the context where it fits in our overall development strategy. So on the left, you see the Innskeeper and PSCDA. Those are approved at the state level, and our state senators, Mishler and Nisgotsky, have been leading those efforts over the last couple sessions. The Innskeeper's tax, if you recall, is what helped fund both Zoo Capital as well as Morris Capital projects. There was also a piece that was for competitive tourism projects, and South Bend projects are in the running for those competitive funds as well. And then the PSCDA, if you recall, 2 sessions ago, it was reinstated here for South Bend, and currently Senators Mishler and Nisgotsky are pushing it through the Senate to, I think it actually went through the Senate just a week or so ago, and is heading to the House to raise the cap of what's coming our way. So that will enable more investments into those designated areas, which includes the Four Winds Field as well as the Century Center and Morris, and I believe the zoo was placed in there a couple of years ago as well. READY, our Regional Development Authority, has allocated the funding for the first tranche of READY funds. All expectations are that there will be another round of READY that as the state works through its budget this year, we hope to see another infusion of transformative projects like those that receive funding this time, and many that had applied and didn't receive funding. So lots of great projects in our region that are ready to be funded. I didn't mean to have that pun. Of course, the big news out of Washington a year and a half ago was the passage of the infrastructure bill, and historic investments in infrastructure across our country. But locally, we did receive one of the RAISE grants for a study about the cloverleaf, the legacy cloverleaf over there by what we're calling the Market District, by the farmers market. There's also money coming for electric vehicle infrastructure, broadband, digital equity investments, and a whole host of normal street and other infrastructure projects. So, those are just starting to come online, the dollars specifically from that bill. I think what you've seen so far are programs that had existed. It wasn't necessarily the funding from the bill that was passed, but those programs got a big boost in funding over the next 10 years. So, those will be ongoing opportunities for us, and we'll look to take advantage of as many of those as possible in the coming years. American Rescue Plan, we'll get to that in a minute. You all know the details of that. And then finally, the Inflation Reduction Act, which places a lot of investments in energy efficiency, clean, green energy, and other climate action plan initiatives. So going over the American Rescue Plan, where we are, we set out over a year and a half ago and allocated the funds of the distribution that we received as a city. And that's the first column of numbers. On the left there is the allocation that we approved together. And then the next two columns are what's been spent already and what's been contracted, so not necessarily out the door, but committed through a legal agreement. And then also those, the next column is those committed into capital projects. And so if you look at where we are as a total spend and committed, we've committed or spent $40 million of the $58 million allotment. And so that means that it's either out the door or contractual, or we have a full contract on those dollars. Of the remaining $18 million that's been allotted, you see, you can look at the differences between the allocation that we approved and the total spent or committed. And so that's where the remaining dollars will go toward. And so you see most of the 28 or a big portion of it is in what's looking at the neighborhood programming. And as you recall, we didn't move forward with as many staff positions in that area, and so that has been slower to come out than some of the other areas in the plan. But we're looking to see a lot of those dollars come out here in the coming months. In particular, if you start with the top, the home repair and the housing financing, there have been RFPs going out for that. So there will be awards coming in the near future. I won't go through every line item, but then with the Safe Community for Everyone, you see that of the $13.4 million, 10.7 has been committed or spent already. Remaining is some of the dollars left over from the technology upgrades, which will be coming out. Will be going out the door soon with partnerships with businesses and residents to invest in the system. You see the other pieces are the first to go out were the COVID response and the premium pay and those things. So those have been out the door for some time. Moving down to the infrastructure, those are part of the Climate Action Plan, and those are ongoing. The next round of the EASY grants to nonprofits investing in energy efficiency and solar is we're taking applications now, so those will be going out soon. And then finally, the utility relief, and most of that is out the door from the one-time relief payment that we worked on over a year ago. But also, a portion of that was always set aside to maintain the expansion of the utility assistance program. And so that's ongoing. And then the Opportunity Fund as well should be news in the coming weeks about that programming going out the door. And then finally, the bottom on youth and workforce development. Of course, we know about the Martin Luther King Dream Center that's going to be under construction here in a matter of weeks. And we know that there's been additional, since we came up with this plan over a year and a half ago, there's been additional dollars put toward that project, including $6 million in the 2023 budget, as well as $3 million that was approved as part of the neighborhood bond financing just a week ago. So lots of pieces there. And then the pre-K centers, the partnership with the United Way and their One Roof program. Of course, the Southeast Center has opened. We're excited about that. The Far Northwest, we're moving as quickly as possible on that center. We've hit a couple technical delays about the land, but we'll work through them as quickly as possible and get that going. And then there's potential for more coming in the future. So that's the ARP update. So now going to the financial operations summary. Here, I think we got an echo now? Someone just joined? All right. So nothing too concerning about any of these numbers. I guess the one that we always keep an eye on is solid waste. And it'll be more clear in subsequent slides about where we are in solid waste. If you remember, when we did the comprehensive rate plan a couple of years ago, solid waste was in the red. Things have improved over the past few months as we collected on the utility bill. With the announcement of resuming shutoffs, we were able to collect a higher percentage of bills than we had been collecting. And so this is something we're going to have to watch throughout this year to see if we need to do something there. As you know, when we did the rate plan, I promised that I wouldn't bring back further rates for a number of years. So if we were to do something, we would find another way to cover the funds there and uphold that promise that we made to council. So moving into the city's financial position, we like to go over just where we are in terms of cash, liquidity, debt, capital assets, and operations. So we'll start first with liquidity. So the total cash balance went down just under just over $6 million from $363 million to $357 million. So that's across all funds and across all operations and funds in the city. Now going to the next slide, we'll see the general plus funds, which are seen as our general city operations, police, fire, at council's budget, mayor's budget, other administrative costs. You'll see that the number went up substantially. That's somewhat artificial because if you recall, and thank you again, we moved the ARP dollars into the general fund last year. And so the effect of that was that you see this increase, even though those dollars are going out the door soon, there is a jump here in the general fund. We did that, of course, to satisfy the Treasury's requirements. It doesn't change how the allotments that we discussed just a couple slides ago. It just changed that it went from something called the ARP fund to the general fund. So you can see, if we were to take out that infusion of ARP funds, we would have been roughly flat, not much of a difference from where we were last year. So as we've been following our budgeted deficits versus actual, changes in cash on hand in the general plus funds, we had deficits projected, but then actually had surpluses in previous years. Last year, we came out about, even. We know this year we have planned spend downs for one-time costs and capital and other areas. So this is something we'll keep an eye on, but just note that increase could be misleading if you just look at that without that context. So moving into cash benchmarking, so here you see we've taken out the ARP, and now you're down to 333 million versus the 357. So that's about a $24 million of ARP dollars that are either still in the door, but contracted, or still moving through the process that we saw on so it's the 18 million plus some dollars that are contracted but haven't left yet. So we still are in a good spot relative to other cities. So moving to debt, our debt profile is also basically the different types of debt where we have them. You see the majority of it is in our sewer operations to make sure that we're meeting the federal consent decree on the long-term control plan. That's where a lot of capital dollars have gone, and we've accrued debt, and that's where, even though we were able to renegotiate that agreement to have better outcomes at hundreds of millions of dollars of savings to ratepayers, there will be further debt to meet those targets. So that's upcoming. After that, you see that there's economic development is a big portion, and that would include the bonds that you approved last week would go into that category. That's not in this. We haven't issued those debts, but that's the type of debt that those are. There are a number of, the reason why we felt good about issuing those neighborhood investments as well as the growth investment in the Beacon Lifestyle District is there are a number of projects and bonds that are going to roll off over the next couple of years. So overall, if we were to do nothing else on the economic development side of things for debt financing, we would be coming out roughly even. So going to the next slide, you'll see that as a whole, when you're including all of the different payments that we have to make, it's been pretty steady over time, and it's been steady even as our revenues have risen. So you see as a percentage, it's come down from where we were, it looks like the height of 2015 in recent times in terms of percentage of our budget, and but the payments have been pretty steady through the last several years. And we can see this, not only have the payments been steady and our budget's going up, but also our population is increasing again. So if you were to look at debt per capita, that's also been coming down in recent years. So compared to other cities, again, we're somewhere in the middle of class. It's coming on the next slide. There we go. We're not the lowest by any means, but we're also nowhere near the highest. And this is the more important thing is that we have a AA bond rating that you'll see on the next slide compared to where other cities, second-class cities across the state, most of those with credit ratings at our level or above are wealthy suburbs of Indianapolis. And so to be not a wealthy suburb of Indianapolis and have that bond rating is a testament to the ability that one of the big things that the agencies look at is our reserves, our reserve level. And if we were to have that reserve level go down, a significant amount, that would likely put our bond rating in jeopardy. So next we'll go to capital assets, and here we got another. Yeah. So here is just the level of the things that the city owns, like all the infrastructure, buildings, other improvements, and some capital that we use to make improvements. And if you were to purchase those today, it would be just over $1.1 billion to purchase all of those. The actual value of them, when you take into account depreciation, is just over $500 million. And if you were to look at what kind of depreciation schedule that would be under, the useful life of these assets are just over 17 years. And so, if someone wants to do the math, you can say how much we should be investing to maintain, our current level or go beyond versus, where we actually are. But that's the next slide is these capital expenditures over time. And so we are set to increase this number in this year and the coming years. As I said, there are a number of water and wastewater projects that have been undergoing planning and design, and they'll be ready to go and get into construction here in the next year or so. So we'll hope to see that number go up to the level we need to maintain our critical infrastructure. And then finally, we got operations, and here's the look at the operating funds from 2022, the revenue, expenditures, and adjustments for accrual to where you get your net. And here's where you can see, again, there are some numbers here where the red means that we've spent down those funds. Nothing here is concerning or not deliberate. Like, again, the only one that we're been focused on and need to stay focused on is that solid waste number at the end, the 600,000 roughly in the red. So that's something we'll continue to monitor, and as I said earlier, we won't look to solve that via rates in this year. Property tax revenue, here is the unaudited number, and the only takeaway here is that the substantial increase that we saw from 2020 to 2021, if you recall, there were some changes in assessments, big changes in assessments that year, and that led to a big jump for us. We know there are some changes in assessments in this coming year, so we might see another slight increase, probably not as big as the one that we saw from 2020 to 2021. But here, from 2021 to 2022, it was roughly flat. So that's something to keep in mind as costs go up. Our property tax, which is a major source of our revenue, is not growing quite at the pace that, at least in this given year, that costs have gone up. Local income tax, here it looks like we've lost revenue where we haven't. I mean, we have, but net we have not lost revenue. This is, if you recall, a change in how the 911 center gets funded. And so now the 911 center gets funded directly from the income tax. And so instead of the income tax coming into the city's coffers, then the city paying out for the 911 center, the dollars are just going directly, never coming into the city's account. And so that accounts for that drop that you see there. So it's not we're not expecting, the economy's been strong. We're not expecting a loss of income taxes as a whole. It's just this hopefully one-time adjustment due to how we're funding the 911 center. So the next slide is the number of employees full-time at the end of the year, and we got over 1,100 employees in December 31st. And on the next slide, you'll see, given our trend, that we're roughly in line with where we've been, but we have come up from what we would call a pandemic low, when we were having great challenges getting employees across the board. We also Our recruitment in police is also a big part of this, being able to go from 30 short to getting fully staffed. I mean, that's almost accounts for, if you just added 30 to the 1075, you're almost there in terms of number of employees at the end of the year. So, we haven't quite gotten there. Like I said, we'll be there in the summer. But that accounts for a big part of it, as well as just some of the pandemic issues resolving here for us. And on the previous slide, I forgot to mention, as you know, public safety is accounts for half of our city's workforce. Public Works is another fourth, and then Parks, Community Investment, and Administrative are the final kind of fourth of the pie there. The employee health insurance trend, the important thing about this is that that prior to having the Activate Clinic for employees, the costs were growing well above inflation, and since we've had Activate, the costs have been growing well below the inflation. So, we did see an uptick, and we have budgeted for an uptick given costs across the board. But we'll wait to see how those actually pan out for us before we worry about that. But we do know that the clinic has been successful in helping contain our costs, and we know our employees take advantage of it and have a good access to medical care in the process. So boiling down all of those pieces, the cash on hand, how much revenue we have, the assets we have, and the debt that we've incurred, it can get, when we look at millions, hundreds of millions, that's hard to think about. So we always try to make an equivalent to a household budget. So if you were making $40,000 a year, this would mean that you have 57 equivalent dollars in savings or checking account. You have a house or other things that are worth about $86,000. And then you have student loans or car payments that you have to make that account for $35,000. And so, if you were to say, a lot of households would love to be in this position where you have cash to be secure and can weather whatever storm comes your way, or inflation comes your way, or a pandemic comes your way. Good to have that ability to weather those storms. Or if you were to lose your job and you're able to make it through, not having to worry about making your whatever payment you had left on your mortgage. Also having some equity into real assets, and then debt is $35,000 of debt would be very manageable. If, like I said, if that was your student loan and car debt, you'd be able to figure that out over the lifetime of those loans. So won't belabor this because we spend a long time going over the budget, but just here's a quick reminder of some of the highlights. Again, we'll be fully staffed for the first time in police. We've got the real-time crime center that we've talked about, as well as the crime analysts to be in the physical location. We have a cloud-based crime center, but also a physical crime center as well. We know there was $300,000 for mental health initiatives, and that was in addition to the just over $2.6 million of American Rescue Plan for the Crisis Response Center. And like I said, that's out the door. There was also a doubling of traffic calming funding in the structural budget for 2023, which is in addition to that doubling of neighborhood infrastructure from the American Rescue Plan. We have the new VPA structure and arts equity position that we're getting under place, as well as workforce development and technology equity positions in the Department of Community Investment and Innovation and Technology. And then finally, there's the pieces in our neighborhoods plan. So there's the rebuilding our streets plan fully funded. There's the new neighborhood plans in LaSalle Park and River Park. There's the dollars for the Dream Center that we talked about. Alley maintenance was something that was a priority, so doubling our capacity to manage our alleyways. There was a tree planting matching fund. This was part of both getting that into more neighborhoods and making sure there's equity in trees across the city, but also it can be one part of our climate action plan. So that's underway with private matching. Athletic courts, we had to add, because the cost came in over what we had originally planned, we had to allocate more dollars to get the athletic court repairs done, in addition to that 1.6 in the American Rescue Plan. We have new inspector for RSVP program and our code inspections. Again, continued investments in climate action and funding for the Ethnic Festival. And then here's sometimes just try to get them all on one site of various large major capital projects that are underway. So of course, one of the series for the bonds last week was this Memorial expansion and Beacon Lifestyle District. So when all is said and done, that it's going to be close to $500 million of investment on the north side of downtown. And our outside funding that we received is from the READY program. The Market District that we talked about briefly earlier, we've received the study dollars, or the design dollars. Study is misleading. It's more design, engineering, and things like that are costly. But whenever, and that was, I think, $2.5 million or so. And the rule of thumb is the design is about 10% of the construction cost. And so we would be going back to receive federal funding to get dollars for the construction costs. So that's could be also, there could be a READY component, a READY 2.0 component for that project. Four Winds Field, you've probably, as we've talked about earlier, there's the news of expanding the cap. And again, this is not any new taxes. This is dollars that would go downstate into their general budget. And they're just allowing us to maintain a higher portion than they allowed when they reinstated it 2 years ago. So that would be able to make major improvements at Four Winds Field and other qualifying projects across the city. The Morris project, in many ways, and Aaron our director of Venue Parks and Arts may disagree, but the city's portion is, the heavy lifting has already been done by the council and the administration in terms of we covered most of the renovation of the existing structure, and we're moving on to the extension and expansion of the Morris for Phase 2. And so roughly $10 million has already been put into this project in Phase 1, and the second phase will be about $20 million. King Center, Dream Center, we've talked about that. Career Center is one that's gotten a lot of attention, and READY, the RDA did allocate some dollars to planning, potentially for the next round of READY dollars. And this is to have, similar to what Elkhart and other counties across the state have, is where there's a central CTE facility that all the schools can feed into. And so that's a partnership with not just the South Bend School Corporation, but other school corporations in our county, as well as the chamber. And then finally, we've been working through it for some time and hope to have more to announce soon, but still working to realize that ambitious proposal to really reinvest and reinvigorate the housing authority properties, especially those along Western Avenue. So that would be a combination of, they applied for READY 1.0, didn't get it, could be a candidate for 2.0, but also there are HUD, national HUD funding that we're pursuing, as well as just figuring out how to make the pencil out and make the project work. So hopefully we'll have good news to share there in the near future. So finally, just some more state legislation to highlight for you is there are a couple big things moving through the Senate in the State House. One is the behavioral health matters. And so the component of that is the behavioral health demonstration program that would go to things like the crisis center that we have invested in through the American Rescue Plan. And that has moved through the process, but the dollars have been put into the general budget discussion. And so to realize actual dollars for this program, it'll be part of the larger budget discussion. The second piece is the governor's Public Health Commission recommendations, and that bill went through its committee with unanimous support. We know there are some opposition being raised to it, but between the governor's support and it looks like a lot of the members of the State House support, we do hope that this will lead to expanded public health funding in our county and other counties in every county across Indiana. So unlike the first bill, which is more of a demonstration, this would be a fundamental shift in how public health is funded and done in Indiana. So that's good news because we are toward the bottom as a state in terms of public health. In the agencies that do rankings on those, we're toward the bottom. And so this has been a priority of the governor, which we appreciate, and appreciate that the State House is taking the governor's recommendations and his commission seriously and looking to move forward on that. And then the piece here is we got to work with our county partners on that. So the county partnerships, we know there's a lot of questions being raised at the county level on various initiatives, including the need or the value of a low barrier shelter and also the county's role. And so that's something that we'll need to continue discussing because this is not something the city can do alone. And we know that our most vulnerable neighbors are not all from, they may be here now, but they're not all coming from within the city limits of South Bend. So that's an important conversation we need to continue to have, as well as how are we going to maximize these public health dollars should the state move forward with additional funding. So finally, upcoming items really quickly. We will be working on our Rebuilding Our Streets 2.0. This is year 3 of our 3-year plan. We had a broader 10-year plan, but now we need to come up with the next 3 to 5-year plan and how we're going to fund it and which roads we're going to be able to get to. As we said, we've upgraded the lights now to LEDs, and some love them, some think they're too bright, but nevertheless, now we have the new lights to figure out where are the gaps that we need to address in the coming years and get more lighting into our neighborhoods. In a week or so, or later this week, we'll release a financial empowerment blueprint, and that's working with partners, national advocacy groups, and I believe that's Saturday that we'll be launching that. The digital equity investments that we talked about, that's dependent on us receiving those competitive funds from state and federal sources, but we continue to push there and hope to receive good news. Mentioned the Opportunity Fund, that should be news coming out of that, and again, that's from the American Rescue Plan dollars that we all worked on together. New neighborhood homes financing, again, American Rescue Plan dollars, the RFPs have been out and should be some awards here in the near future. We talked about the stadium, potential stadium upgrades, hoping for good news from the State House. The water and sewer capital investments are going to be ready to go here. And then finally, looking forward to seeing what our community comes up with for the next round of READY funding, assuming it's a great place to be when you can, when people are pretty much assuming that that's going to get through the State House. So of all the budgetary considerations, READY 2.0 and potentially even the public health investments are not in serious doubt as of now. So with that, that's the update to, financial update to the city. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for the presentation. A lot of information and a lot of good information that you made very plain for us to be able to understand. At this time, I would like to acknowledge some of the youth council members who are here tonight. They have come to hear your address. So I wanted to say welcome and thank you so much for coming. And I know this is near and dear to Councilor White's heart. So you are welcome, and we look forward to your service in your schools. With that, I will turn to council. We have 2 questions apiece for the mayor to start off, and I'll just go down the line. Councilor Davis, do you have any comments or questions for the mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your presentation, sir. I had a question. I don't know what slide it was. It was a slide that was explaining or illustrating the general revenue fund. And I just have questions about that. I very well could be missing something, but it looks like that dollar amount that existed there with the expenditure versus the allocation, it appeared to me that it was like a huge amount of overspending. Was that overspending? Could somebody bring it up, please?
You're talking about slide 6, or which slide are you?
It was early in your presentation. Eli says slide 6. My money's on Eli.
That one.
Yeah, that one. Your expenditures are way over your revenue. Am I reading that correctly? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple ways to look. I mean, do you have more questions on that?
Yeah, that's obvious. But what I wanted to ask you is that after you put in the American Rescue Plan dollars into the general revenue fund, or that was before? Because if that was the case, then we were way below or way out of budget. If that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask our city controller, he's been here a week, to know if that was in that specific line item. I will say generally, when you're looking at the revenue expenditures and then the net, you have to look at that third column, the adjustments, because there are encumbrances and other things that carry over from a previous year. And so if the dollars may have gone out the door in this particular calendar year, but it's dependent on revenue, not just coming from that. So the first 2 columns are calendar year, but some expenditures are based off of revenue from previous calendar years. Does that make sense?
No, but I'm going to leave it alone. The ARP dollars that we're still talking about, because that's in that same budget. Why weren't we as aggressive as we should have been with those dollars and aiding the support of the housing authority? I think they asked for like 12 million at one point, and we're still kind of working to work with them.
Yeah,
So-
right now, that's not an issue of funding. That's an issue of getting the accompanying, not an issue of public funding. It's an issue of getting all the different funding streams together, which includes that from HUD, the national funding sources. So it's not a funding issue. If you recall, we didn't put that into this plan because we had other sources of funding to look at for that project.
Thank you.
Councilor Hammond?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for the presentation. 2 questions. You mentioned the 3 tax credit projects and an adding of 160 affordable units. Are you able to speak as to whether any of those 160 affordable units will be accepting any of the HUD vouchers that are out there that are expiring because people cannot find landlords or affordable housing in the city?
We can look to the specific agreements or plans for those developments, but I would imagine that some of these units would be eligible for those.
Thank you. And then on slide 23, if we could take a look at that, please. There is a line item for parking garages, which shows us $42,000 in the red. That's for the 2 garages that we currently operate in the city, is that correct?
Is that just 3? Yeah.
There are 3 in the
3
city
currently.
that we currently operate. And we just passed a bond to bring 2 more online.
Right. I mean, this is a challenge about density and development is until you get to a certain place, structured parking is not going to pay for itself. And so it is, by definition, needs to be subsidized with public funds, or it just won't happen. And if you don't have structured parking, you're not going to get the investments. So what you end up with is vacant lots in your downtown indefinitely, unless you do something to change that. And so that's what these investments, and that's why the city has been taking on the amenity of parking in our urban core.
So just to reiterate, those will remain being paid out of the general fund.
No, so there's 2 questions there. There's a maintenance, there's an operating cost to parking garages, then of course there's the capital cost of the parking garages. So some of our parking garages are in need of more investments, more upkeep, more maintenance, and so that's one piece of it. If you just looked, our former controller Dan Parker used to love this line, it balances out if you don't count all the costs. So if you don't count the capital costs, then, the revenue will be able to cover it. But when you're trying to pay off, debt service or those capital costs, in addition to those ongoing operating and maintenance costs, then that's when it becomes negative. Now, why it's this number for this year versus other years, I mean, that in the grand scheme of things, this is a very, it's a smaller dollar amount. And so, we can get more information to you. I don't have that offhand.
Thank you.
Councilor Webb?
Thank you for your presentation. On the ARP table there, a couple of the items that haven't yet been expended. One of them is about $1 million for COVID facility upgrades. Is that something that we anticipate still spending on, or is that available for other purposes?
I believe that was going into one of the city-owned facilities, and is it Century Center?
They're still doing COVID upgrades?
The
Or they-
upgrades of the,
Those were primarily for prepping for future emergencies, so backup generators and air handling units in the Century Center.
And then could you talk a little bit about the small business assistance? What's the administration's plan for that?
So that's, again, that's both that and the Opportunity Fund. We hope to have more details to share in the near future. That's something that hasn't moved out as quickly as we'd hoped.
Okay. And I just want to thank you for mentioning the Rebuilding the Streets 2.0. I think it was great what we've done so far. Our streets are so far behind that I appreciate your focus on continuing investments and catching us up a little bit, slowly but surely, but getting there.
Thank you. There's always more to do.
On streets, for sure.
Councilor Niskoski.
Thank you, Mayor, for your presentation. The only real question I had when we talked about the 911 center bond payment and how that comes out of the local tax, income tax, because we still owe dollars on that original facility, right, through a bond. So once that gets paid off, will there still be, do you know what the obligation is then that we would still have to pay through that local income tax, or?
So the short answer is I wouldn't expect our portion of the cost to go down. Like, there will be capital costs that will go down because of that initial investment, but there are further capital costs that they need to do and invest in over the next few years, as well as, it's been taken a struggle to get the pay right with our dispatchers and get fully staffed to where we need to be. So The short answer is, yes, there are some capital payments about to roll off from the 911 center, but there are other capital investments that they need to make in the coming years, as well as keep the operations afloat. So under the new model, instead of us receiving the full share of income tax as a city, and then pay out according to the formula that we agreed to as part of the intergovernmental agreement from several years ago. The new piece is a certain percentage of the shares, our shares, as well as the counties, as well as Mishawaka's, and the townships. If you recall, the townships were raising issues about this proposal. That all goes directly to the Fund the 911 Center, and then that portion, those dollars are between operations and capital. And so there was no projection that I saw, and I know there are others on the board now too, but there's no projection that I saw that we expect to get reimbursed from the share that they've committed. Now, if the costs end up exceeding the amount that comes in from the income taxes, there is a formula that splits those excess costs between the different jurisdictions.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Lee?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, for your presentation and all of these great things that we've seen happening in our city. My questions is about the home repair and financing. How are we going to roll that out, and how soon will that roll out, and how will residents be able to apply for it?
That's a great question. I don't know if we've already announced it or we're announcing it soon. So, but I would suggest that maybe we have a committee or some other conversation about it. Maybe a neighborhoods committee or other avenue where we can discuss the full plan. Because I know if it hasn't been released just recently, it's on the way here soon.
And then, when we talk about supporting the housing authority, what are the key things that needs to happen in order for us to be able to commit dollars to that?
So it's working with the housing authority to, like any other development, there are different funding sources. The city is a portion of that. And in this case, a pretty significant portion, like in some other projects. But it's figuring out all the other pieces. And so we're working with the housing authority, but as not the person that's doing it, there's only so much we can do. And that's not to say it's the housing authority either. I believe they're looking for another partner, private partner, to figure this out, because the previous one hadn't been able to figure out the right combination.
Councilor Rachel Tomas Morgan.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Mayor, for your presentation. I can't recall what slide it was, so forgive me, but in tax expenditures, I was wondering if you could give me just a quick historical context. In 2019, we were at 74.5 million. I was just
Which slide
curious
is this?
on cash expenditures, cash expenditures or capital cash expenditures?
The capital expenditures, why there's the jump there?
Mm-hmm. If
I
you
know-
could just remind me what that was.
Well, one part of it was the parks, the MySB Parks and Trails coming, a lot of projects coming together. So if there was a normal baseline, then there's a jump. That's part of it. I'm trying to think what else was happening. As we discussed earlier, it's sometimes the timelines are tough in the calendar years because the dollars get approved or appropriated in one year, but it takes a while to get to especially these big capital projects. So if you think back to the MySB Parks and Trails as an example, I believe that was approved in 2017 by council, issued then in 2018, and then you see a big jump in 2019 because we can't always go forward, until we have funding in place to do these capital projects. So there is a lag between issuance and expenditure oftentimes. So I think that's a big part of it, but there are probably other projects that I may be forgetting right now.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. My second question is, this may not be fair, but in terms of the Ready 2.0, or are you able to preview any ideas that the city might be pitching?
Well, there were a number of ideas. We were hoping to get funding in the first round, so certainly those would be ones we want to look at first. But, we've talked about the Market District maybe coming to a more mature place. That was one that didn't apply in the last round. So that's potentially one. There's, again, the one that we had hoped would receive funding, and again, thank you for your support of the project just west of the airport. There's potentially other phases to that could be a good candidate for Ready 2.0. So, lots of things in the works, and we'll see what the RDA is looking to fund. I know housing is going to be a big priority regardless of what the individual projects are. So these projects are all going to have to contain some housing component given the shortage for all income types. So that would be our hope, is to see some major investments in housing.
Thank you.
Councilor Warner.
I don't have any questions. Just thank you. I look forward to this yearly wrap-up. We get so lost in the week-to-week weeds of things that we often don't, forget about the big picture. And it was great to kind of see that big picture again and all the great things that are happening. Thank you.
Councilor White.
Thank you, President McBride. One thing about being towards the end, a lot of the questions that I would have already been answered or somewhat addressed. I'm very excited about learning about the home repair program. My only question is that prior to the pandemic, we had started that process, and we had a number of homes. So those homes that had been identified and was receiving support, have those homes been addressed? And so starting with the new home repair program, we'll be looking at all new homes or processes and procedures with that. I think it would be very helpful to have an update, because there have been so many questions from our citizens wanting to know when we're going to start the home repair program up again.
Absolutely, and happy to shape that update as however you think is most useful, including looking back at the historic investments and how they worked out, as well as looking forward into the new funding.
And my last question, as the administration begins to learn more about the different funding sources, you've named some from the state, the county partnership. I think it will be important that as the administration becomes aware that we have a process in place so that the council can be made aware, so that when questions are being asked, we'll be in a better position to respond to those questions. It's a lot of revenue streams, and even trying to ensure that our citizens are aware of the different, revenue streams. I think this presentation has been very helpful, and I know it's going to be on the website so our citizens can go through it and begin to look at, what you and the council, what we have to look at as we begin the budget process.
Absolutely, and there are numerous other funding streams that we didn't touch upon here. But I think it is important to get that awareness out, because, for example, when we were talking about the Kennedy Park plan, and there were folks from the east side saying, well, what about the Potawatomi Park? And we had to share that both the federal program and the local dollars couldn't be spent over there. That's just not where they could be spent. And so getting that awareness out is critical, because, some people want to see it as this versus that, but oftentimes, we're trying to figure out how best to match sources to the things that the community wants. And so what we can assure the River Park folks is that we're working to figure out a financing plan for them as well, but it has to be, it can't be the same one as the one over here, because of the way the federal programs and the local dollars can be spent.
And President McBride, I would like to just see if I can
release some of our youth council members.
Yes.
And those that could be online, they do have a homework assignment.
Yes.
They have to submit, they're smiling, a reflection paper based on their experiences tonight. So Mayor, I'll make sure we share those comments with you. So youth council members.
More numbers, right? You
And,
want
oh,
more
yeah.
numbers?
And so, thank you, and you are released, you can go home and do your homework assignment. And some have already left. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, I would entertain a motion to resolve into the committee of the whole.
So moved.
It's been, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion's carried.
The Committee of the Whole is now in session. This is the portion of the council's meeting where bills are given a second reading and public hearing. I wish to share with you that bills that will be given a second reading and public hearing have been given a first reading and set for a committee meeting and public hearing prior to this evening's meeting. In addition, you will hear from the chairperson of the committee where the bill was discussed and the results of their discussion. If the proposed ordinance is a zoning ordinance, a report from a staff member will be given. In all other situations, the formal presentation on the proposed ordinance will immediately follow the committee report. The following presentation shall be untimed. In the Committee of the Whole, we have Bill 52-22, and I'm going to ask the committee chair if she will give an explanation and.
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. Happy to. Bill 5222 was first brought to us December on the 12th. At that time, it was passed out of the committee with a no recommendation. Then it was tabled on the 1st of on January the 9th to today's date. And I think there might have been one more meeting in between there that I just missed, to be honest. So this has been tabled at least 3 times. And it is for an alley vacation request. The petitioner, Mr. Boardman, his attorney, Myra Reed, contacted me today, and at this point, we would like to look at tabling this indefinitely. And what tabling indefinitely means that if the committee or the council members agree to this, it will give him further time to evaluate if he wants to proceed with this alley vacation or not. And I've been getting a lot of feedback from people showing up here because it keeps getting tabled, and they think we're the ones just tabling it, and it's really at the request of the petitioner. So our options here are we can do that and table it indefinitely at the request of the petitioner, or we can just not pass it, deny the alley vacation. So at this point, all of the public input has already been had at the committee level and at the public hearing level. And at this point, with the council members present, it's not up for any debate from the public other than a vote from the council, which means there would have to be a motion and it would have to be seconded. And then we would proceed with the vote on how we want to handle Bill 5222.
All right, I will now entertain a motion regarding Bill 52-22.
I would like to offer an explanation really quick. I'm going to make a motion to table indefinitely. It probably should become a practice of this council. If a petitioner says, hey, need some help or some time, and they ask for something specific, like this one has, we should honor that. It doesn't hurt us one way or the other. So that's my motion, to table indefinitely.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion to table it indefinitely in a second. Clerk Jones, please call the roll.
Councilmember Davis? Aye. Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
Councilmember Warner? Aye. Councilmember Wax?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan?
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond?
Aye.
Vice President Niskoski?
Aye.
President McBride?
Aye.
9 ayes.
All right.
I would like to ask a question real quick from, I don't know if Attorney Palmer can answer this or not. This motion to table indefinitely, if this is 3 months before it comes back, do we know if all of the neighbors will then be notified by letter? Or Clerk Jones, do you know? I know you guys send those out. Is that a requirement or again or not? How are they going to know?
The only way they would know would be watching the council agendas.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, so
Can there be an attempt for them to find out through mail? I think that's a reasonable question Sheila just asked. Could we send out a round of mail to those who are impacted to ensure that they know what's going on? I think that was a really good question, actually.
Yes, it is, because not everybody has access to the internet. The
Yeah.
gentleman today sounded very frustrated. I just don't want to disenfranchise anybody from the process.
Yeah,
What we can do is send out the public hearing ad to the neighbors, the addresses that we have already, if we have them, the ones that they sent out before, I think they're in the packet. We can send them out again. I don't know, the gentleman that was here earlier, I don't know if we have his address or not, but we can send them out to the neighbors again.
When we know this is ready to come up.
Right, when
Okay.
it's coming on the
yeah,
agenda.
I think that's
Thank you.
good work.
Thank you so much.
Clerk Jones, his name and address would have been recorded in the committee this afternoon.
Okay.
52-22 has been tabled indefinitely. I will now entertain a motion to rise from the committee of the whole and report back to the full council.
So moved.
Second?
It has been second and moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose? Motion carries.
Thank you. Full council is back in session. There are no bills on third reading. We will go to resolutions. Resolution 23-04, second substitute. Counselor White.
Yes, the Neighborhood Residential Committee heard the first substitute of this bill. And at that time, we recommend that it be sent to the full council with a favorable recommendation. Now that we have a second sub, I think we need to accept that second sub, and then I can send you the recommendation as well.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the second sub?
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion's carried.
Now I'll make a recommendation from the Residential Neighborhoods Committee to send the second sub of Resolution 23-04 to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm the presenter. I have to read this whole resolution again? I think so. Or would you like for me to
We'll have to read it.
preference? You have to read it? You gonna read it for me?
I can, but, I mean, I have to read the title, but I can read it.
Girl, please. Please, Clerk Jones.
First, I'll read the title, and then I'll read the resolution.
Thank you.
Okay. The title is 2304, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, calling for the continuing use of all current South Bend public high schools as high schools. Whereas our public schools are a vital piece of our city, and they do so much more than just teach children, they are hubs for the neighborhood and community, hosting continuing education courses for adults, extracurricular activities, sporting events, academic clubs, public swimming pools, open libraries, and invite the community for local events, concerts, seminars, and more. And whereas strong public education system is essential to the individual and collective well-being of our country and its people, and to the development of an informed and engaged citizenry. And whereas public education serves to develop an informed and productive workforce through a system that allows for social mobility and repeated studies which illustrate that free universal education for children in grades K through 12 can be the greatest factor in addressing inequality in society. And whereas our state legislature has slowly reduced funding for public schools, passed a law in which a private for-profit can purchase a vacant school building for $1 and has new legislation proposing to take additional funding from public schools to provide to those that are homeschooled. Another bill would make the currently nonpartisan school board elections partisan party elections. Whereas a result of these state legislation actions, our South Bend Community School Corporation has experienced significantly reduced enrollment and reduced funding, and whereas the school corporation and school board are now facing difficult choices regarding the utilization of South Bend Community School Corporation buildings and possible changes in building uses, including closures. And whereas at recent schools community task force meeting, the design firm Fanning Howey three potential building utilization scenarios and began a month-long process engaging feedback on those 3 scenarios to better utilize buildings. And whereas of the 3 scenarios, only one kept all current high schools open as high schools, and the other 2 options would close either 1 or 2 of the current high schools as high schools. And whereas the information provided to the public leaves many important questions unanswered, including but not limited to, what will happen to teachers and other employees at the affected schools? What will happen to dual language programs? Will the high school magnet program be eliminated? How would school closures impact the surrounding neighborhoods? What happens to students who are just beginning academic programs not offered by all? And whereas the South Bend Community School Corporation has set dates for upcoming meetings to both provide information and receive feedback prior to making any decision, and whereas it has been reported that the South Bend Community School Corporation plans to make a final decision next month. Now therefore be it resolved by the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, as follows. Section 1, the Common Council recognizes and highlights that the Indiana State Legislators' priorities and policies have played a significant role in putting our school corporation into the position it is now, and has provided little to no assistance or support for our school corporation. Section 2, the Common Council asks the school corporation to consider factors beyond just the school corporation's financial situation and costs, and consider the developmental, educational, financial, emotional, and societal harm to the residents of those neighborhoods in our city as a whole. Section 3, the Common Council acknowledges and commends the school corporation for its public and transparent informational and engagement process regarding possible school closures. Section 4, the Common Council encourages all residents to please engage in this process and to express their opinions on the various scenarios. Section 5, the Common Council urges the school corporation to refrain from making any final decisions until more questions are answered.
Thank you so much for your assistance in reading all of that.
I have one more section.
Oh, one more section.
Okay.
You had to breathe, I'm sorry.
Section 6, the Common Council believes that it is in the best interest of the residents of South Bend to keep all current high schools in existence as high schools or to retain as schools of the South Bend Community School Corporation, and strongly encourages the South Bend Community School Corporation to do so. Approved this 13th day of February 2023.
Thank you. With that being said, I want to thank all of the co-sponsors for helping with this bill. It's a very important matter for our public schools and our various neighborhoods, especially the disparaging ones of black and brown colors, that if one of the schools closed, people can be displaced and have transportation problems. And we have a lot of great things that's going on in our school corporation with the magnet schools, with our teachers deserving more pay, and transportation issues. We just need to make sure that we are supporting our neighborhoods and making sure that everyone is healthy and can thrive. And with that, I'll turn with any of the co-sponsors at this time and see if you have any additional comments.
Sure. The mayor just presented earlier, and it is actually it's congruent to the conversation. He said that the city of South Bend is growing population-wise. But the school corporation is designing a plan to right size because there are not enough kids going into the schools. So where is our makeup at when it comes to new residents? Because that tells you where the growth is at. I don't know how you are closing schools, but you're gaining population. Something's wrong there. It's just a comment.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else? I'll turn to, no one else had anything. I was going to turn to Eli, but go ahead. No, because he's in opposition, so we're speaking.
Okay. Well, I would just say that it's very important that we remember that schools are what makes up a city. You know, I was growing up, we went from Marquette to Dixon to LaSalle. Our high schools are very important, and we got to keep them open. Even the ones that are looking to be annexed. I fully support us supporting our high schools. High school is a place where kids should be able to feel comfortable to grow and develop, and I've seen it even in my children that they're growing and they've graduated or growing into becoming young men, and we have to support our schools. We have to keep our schools open. So, thank you for this resolution.
Thank you. Counselor Wax, you have any comments?
Are we doing public feedback first?
I can. Would you like for me to turn?
I just want to, I'm happy to.
Whichever way, whichever way you want.
Okay. So South Bend Schools has been dealing with an incredibly difficult situation. It's frankly, from my vantage point, it seems like an almost impossible situation. The enrollment has been going down for a long time, and they are left with infrastructure that's frankly designed for a much larger enrollment. And that puts the school corporation in a very difficult position where they have to figure out how to effectively run a school corporation for much fewer kids than their infrastructure is designed for, which makes it prohibitively expensive to run. I don't know the answer to that decision, and I'm not going to presume to have the answers or what the answer should be. With regards to this resolution points to a single factor as to the cause of reduced enrollment and the difficult decision that the school corporation has in front of it. It points exclusively to the state legislature. Within that, it says that there's reduced funding, and it points out the school choice legislation as a big problem. First, I think instead of condemning school choice, I think we need to be commending the state legislature for providing parents with the opportunity to make the decision as to what is the best interest of their child, and to be able to send their child to the school that they think is best for their child's growth and development. The idea that we should say that no, parents do not have any choices where to send as a way to buoy a school corporation makes no sense to me, and I don't think we should be putting the blame there. Additionally, it points to reduced funding when, in fact, the funding has never been higher on a per child basis to the school corporation. The revenue is increasing. Now, their issue is that their enrollment is down overall, and that's something that has predated all the school choice laws. Enrollment has been down for a long time, and I don't know the answer, but to assume or to presume that there is a single source of the problem, which just is inaccurate as to the facts on the ground, I think is misplaced. Finally, the final section, I believe it's section 8 of the resolution, it presumes the answer. It presumes that it is the best option to keep the schools open. I don't know what the answer is. And what this substitution does do that I support is it recognizes and supports the school corporation's decision to get public feedback, which they have been doing. I don't know the answer, and I don't know that they know the answer yet. But they have been trying to be as public and work with the public and the communities that are going to be affected by whatever decision they make to try to make that best decision. And for us to swoop in and, as a separate body who doesn't have jurisdiction over the school corporation, to come and say what the answer is, I don't think is appropriate for us. I think we should give them the respect to listen to the feedback, which they're doing, and to make the best decision for them. Accordingly, I would move that I would make a motion to strike the fifth whereas clause, Section 1 of the resolution and Section 8 of the resolution. It retains the rest of the language that says that the public schools are a crucially important part of our community, and their success is our success, and that we should continue to work with the public to find the best solution, which I agree 100% with. The limited things that I don't support is putting the exclusive blame on the state legislature and to presume what the answer is.
Thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your comments. I need to address, there is a motion on the floor, but there's some of the information in there that is not accurate, meaning that there was discussion with the superintendent of the school and with the president that I sat down with and drafted the resolution. So it's not anything that they didn't agree with or support. So it's definitely not nothing that was blind in the wind. So I don't want you to have that misperception or to assume that that discussion didn't take place, because it did. So that's where this was drafted with conversation and their input is one of the things that I wanted to say publicly, that people wouldn't think that it was just arbitrary without the school corporation actually being at the table. With that, there's a motion on the floor.
I give him a second.
There's a motion and a second, and can you repeat the motion?
It's to strike the fifth whereas clause,
Can I
which,
see that? She took mine.
sorry, thank you.
I think it's.
Thank you, Councilor Hannan. The fourth whereas clause, which says it's the fourth and the fifth. The fourth and the fifth whereas clause is Section 1 of be it resolved, and Section 8, well, it's misnumbered. The one that's labeled as Section 8, which I believe is
Are we talking the
sixth section.
paragraph or when the section is set?
Right here. So he wants to take out the first one and the last one.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the bottom.
And he wants to take out these two right here. And it's been seconded by Councilman Davis.
Yes, I think we need a chance to look at what he's talking about. So he's saying paragraph 2, 3, 4, and 5 in the body of the resolution, so everyone would know. And then also section, let's see, section 1. And section 8.
It's labeled Section 8, it's the sixth section.
I'll have Eli repeat the motion.
It's to, thank you. It is to strike paragraphs, the fourth and fifth whereas paragraphs, to strike out of the resolved section, the Section 1 and the last section, which is labeled Section 8, but is in fact, the sixth section.
It has been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, I'll have you call the roll.
Councilmember Warner?
Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry, parliamentary.
procedurally, it's open for debate among the council members.
Thank
And
you.
we also have to have a public hearing.
Have to have a public input first.
Not on the motion, but we have to have a
So what do I do with the motion? Because I do the public input.
We could have the vote on the motion before we have public hearing on the resolution, right?
Correct, correct. My point was that it's open for council debate and
discussion.
comment before voting.
Is there any council that has any comments before the vote or discussion?
The only thing I would like to say is by striking saying that by them saying that a for-profit can come in and purchase a school building for $1, and that does not hurt the school corporation is not true, because that loses capital. They're losing capital in their buildings, the taxpayer dollars that were paid here locally to maintain those buildings. And the last part that you asked to strike out that talks about where it says, and strongly encourages. We're not telling them what to do, we're just encouraging them. This is a very sensitive topic for people who have their children currently in their schools. Where are they going to send them? What are they going to do? What about the programs that they're in? And it's asking to keep the high schools in existence as high school or to retain as schools. So that could be a career center. That could be repurposing that building for some type of trades that could be used in there, rather than letting a for-profit come in here for $1 and take that building from our school corporation and denying our kids education. So I do not agree with this at all.
And that doesn't even get into the voucher program that talks about the funding issue, that people can go, children could go to a charter on a voucher, and then once the count is gone, the voucher doesn't come back if they come back into the public school. So it's a lot broader than just saying that the legislator, but those are things that have been passed that affects and impacts, especially our black and brown communities. Councilor Tomas Morgan.
Yes, I just have a response. Councilman Wax, I really do appreciate what you had to share, and I will agree that in the whereas that you mentioned that the state legislature is in my opinion, it is a significant factor in our schools, but it isn't the only, and I acknowledge that and respect that. We know that families just aren't having as many children, and that is has been a factor, and that's what we're seeing today. But there's been discussion about this, and I really respect what I had suggested was incorporated in here, that to retain in the final section, to retain as schools of the South Bend Community School Corporation, I thought gave other options, as Councilwoman Nitskotsky had mentioned. And so because of that addition, I'll be supporting this current form of the resolution. Thank you.
Any other discussion or comments?
Sure. I wanted to offer the reason why there was a second to it. I think it's imperative to take into account of pro-charter school voices, because at the end of the day, it's just one community. And if we have not figured out, if we don't want to figure out how to deal with what is already on the horizon, we're going to be fighting a losing battle, to be honest with you. I think it makes sense to really key in on the things that the school corporation is doing with or without outside forces being accounted for. I think what Mr. Wax is really providing is a very contextual discussion about the dollars that have gone through that school corporation without blaming the charter school movement as the reason why it's hard or it's rough. It plays a part. It plays a very big part. But I'm under the frame of mind that there has been a considerable amount of resources that have gone to that school corporation. We just passed a referendum. Many of you supported that. And so there's been extra dollars there that has raised our property taxes. And so what is going on? And I think that is a better question than to say, well, the folks down the street, made it hard for us. Yeah, they are, but there's another conversation that needs to be had. And I'm really worried about what happens with this public school corporation. We've seen Gary, we've seen Benton Harbor, we're experiencing Indianapolis, we're experiencing Detroit. And so we're watching those things happen, and it's Chicago as well. has a lot to do with what resources were not being used properly within their own budget. That's just my take, my understanding, that's been my experience. And maybe, maybe not, but I think that it deserves a conversation, definitely.
Thank you, thank you. Counselor Hammond?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I do think it's important that we keep the truth about the history of the public school system in Indiana in mind. And Councilman Wax did mention that currently funding has picked up. We are seeing additional funding now. But if we look historically, our public schools in the state of Indiana have been grossly underfunded for a multitude of years. And turning our back on the historical truths, I don't think is healthy. I would be fine in removing that fourth section, but I believe the rest of them, in my perspective, should remain. Thank you.
If no other comments, we'll turn to the vote. Clerk Jones?
Councilmember Warner,
No.
Councilmember Wax,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Nay.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Nay.
Councilmember Hammond,
Nay.
Vice President Niskoski,
Nay.
Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember Lee,
Nay.
President McBride.
Nay.
We have 7 nays and 2 ayes.
Thank you. Resolution,
Public. What's the most, you got public?
I'm sorry. Oh,
It's just
I have
a
the
motion.
public hearing. Yes, thank you so much.
No problem.
I done got off track here. At this time, I would like to turn to the public to see if there are any comments for first people speaking in favor of Resolution 2304.
Christopher Huff, 1831 College Street. I am neither speaking in favor nor in opposition. But what I will say is, Mrs. Hammond, you hit the nail on the head, because we need to go back to long-term history. Not one of you up there know, because you either did not live here or you were not born. But this school district's been on the slide since 1967. And that started when the baby boomers started going through the system and being gone. And then it really kicked in because of a lot of misactions, terrible, malfeasant actions that not just the city council, but previous mayors have promulgated upon this city. And I stood up here about 5 years ago, and Mrs. White and Mr. Davis, you remember when I said, don't tear these houses down. But yet, by God, Mr. Buttigieg, excuse me, being blunt, that was his babe. So 600 more houses gone in this city. That means 3, on average, people per household, 1,800 more people out of this city, and yet, I don't disagree with what Mueller just said a while ago. There's been a little bitty uptick in population, but you know how long it's going to take for that population to be regained? Because it peaked out at 139,000 in 1967, and then it went down. It'll take 111 years for this city to regain its lost population, and that's just the city itself. Now, you all know that the South Bend Community School Corporation, which is not a school city, is not just the city of South Bend, but it also includes parts of the city of Mishawaka and many of the suburban townships, okay? Now, simultaneous with all these missteps, malfeasance, terrible, terrible situation that this city has gotten itself into, what's happened with the violent crime rate? Skyrocketed, and particularly in the last 3 years. Now, what happened 3 months ago at Clay High School? I watched them build Clay High School when I lived in Clay Township as a child. What happened there? 10% of that population, that school body population, rioted, right? How many of them went to jail? I don't know, whatever it was. They were all doing bad things. They weren't studying, were they? So you can sit up there, some of you, and harangue about the state of Indiana, blah, 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 blah.
the Catholic school systems educate kids much less expensively and do a better job. And that's just one example. So, again, I'm not speaking in favor of this or against it, but this population slide in this school district has been systemic for years. And if you don't know it, by God, you need to know it, especially any of you that might happen to have been previously on the school board. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Please state your name and address.
Shane Williams, Inez, 22500 US 20 South Bend. Good evening, Madam President and council members. I am an executive assistant for the superintendent and the school board of trustees and the assistant superintendent of business and finance for the South Bend Community School Corporation since 2019. I joined the team with the new administration as it kicked off and have been a part of the referendum, back-end efficiency studies and improvements, safety and security, as well as this facilities issue for the last couple of years. And all of these items that the corporation is handling, I mean, these are heavy, heavy lifts. You all understand politics, and education is not void of politics. But there are two factors in this situation. It's education and economics. And this resolution is primarily much about the economics rather than the education. We're losing 500 students per year, which is roughly $3 million. We have about $800 million in capital assets in facilities, roughly 16,000 students, 3,000 employees. There's a lot going on in the corporation, logistically, outdated back-end systems, tons of efficiency issues. And so all of this is, this is nothing new. I'm probably the youngest person in the room at this point, but like the gentleman said before, a lot of these issues, they've been coming down the rail for quite some time. What I would like to make a point about quickly is that it's not all on the state legislators, although that does play a great deal of it. But when you have 30, nearly 40 buildings that are just old and deteriorating, and I'm speaking not in an official capacity, but I'm speaking as someone who has been in the room with administration, board members, as these decisions are being made, and as we're planning, and then coming to the community with some sort of solution or guide. But these buildings are old, they're expensive, we're paying for liability protection or insurance, we're paying for lawn maintenance, and after a recent snowstorm last month, I mean, we've been paying for repairs on buildings that are empty. And that just really is not an efficient use of taxpayers' dollars, right? But I will say that I do applaud you for bringing this resolution forward. I believe it was Mr. Davis who said at one time, if we lose our schools, we lose our city, and we've seen the ramifications of losing schools in other parts of the city over the last few decades. But I applaud this resolution. I think that it is a great start to engaging the community in these discussions, because we've had a hard time bringing the community to the table to have these discussions. So I am proud to be a South Bender and to see that these things this type of legislation is being put forth to build bridges between one entity and another and to engage the public as a whole. So I would like to say thank you for that. I would also like to say the public has seen some very recent controversy from you all, and so to have a piece of legislation that is put forward with all of your names on it, that really is it's good to see. It's good to see all of you working together, and it's good to see that we can at least all get behind the babies, because the babies are important. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? state your name and address for the record.
Sherry L. Bolden Simpson, 6216 Exeter Court, South Bend, Indiana. It was not my intention to really say something today, but as a 36-year veteran of South Bend Community School Corporation, a math teacher, a guidance counselor, an assistant principal, and a principal, I commend you for getting involved and saying something about this, because so goes the South Bend Community School Corporation, so goes South Bend. First of all, I need to give a shout out to our teachers. They teach everybody. Anybody that comes to South Bend School Corporation, the door is open. And guess what? We just don't get to kick them out. We work with them. I have a vision, and I think you're with me, that we're going to be a restorative community. We don't throw kids away. We teach everyone. Some people think that, why don't you get rid of those students? Where are they going to go, in your garage? We keep them, and we teach them. So a shout out to the teachers. No, we're not perfect. Well, which entity is. But there's definitely been some outside forces that have contributed significantly. So I applaud you, City Council, for getting involved and having a resolution. And I cheer you on to keep on looking what's going on, comment, and we have to let the public know that these issues are complex. They're not as simple as this school teaches better than this school. Oh, no. No, sir. I will put our teachers up against anyone. So thank you, and stay involved. Keep watching, say something, and so together, collaboratively, we can solve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Jones, is there anyone online?
I'm looking. I don't see any questions in the chat, and I don't see anyone online with their hands raised. There's no one expressing interest to make a comment on this bill.
Thank you. I will turn now to see if there's anyone who would wish to speak in opposition of this resolution 2304. There's no one in the audience. Do you see anyone online?
No, there's no one online expressing interest.
Thank you. With that, I'll turn back to council, and I'll just make a brief statement that, Riley High School is in my district. And I know when they were talking a few years ago of closing Washington down, one of my family's alma maters, that I supported to not have that school closed also. And so my investment in the neighborhood is speaking for my constituents, and also, like I said, for the public schools, because that would be a travesty to see any one of our high schools closed. Are there any other comments?
Chair.
Councilor Warner? Councilor
Sure.
Davis?
Hey, thinking down the line, it may be prudent on the side of this council to maybe, I'm just throwing this out here, hire some sort of consultant to work on behalf of the council with the school corporation. I think it'll, given what we are asking for and what we're trying to really, talk about, I think the real estate conversation means a lot, means a whole lot. But having a consultant at the table, as far as discussion when those things are being talked about, to help push forward our concerns, but also make sure that we're educated on our end about what's happening and how to maneuver some of these things. Because we don't have a vote on that school board, but we do have influence. So I think somebody that would, that's educated in that type of role, being hired by the council, this is serious stuff, but by the council, I think may make sense. It's not emotional or anything, I'm just putting it out there.
Thank you for your comment. Councilor Warner?
Thank you. As we've gone through it, folks have picked out kind of one thing here or there, but I think for me, It was, the section that resonates most is encouraging the public to attend these meetings, to get information and take part of this. This may be the only chance you get, so encouraging people to do that. I spoke with two of the school board members pretty extensively over the weekend and got a whole lot of information and a better understanding on my end. And we've had to make tough decisions, and I left both of them saying I don't envy you in the decision that you have to make. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor White?
I would just like to thank those who are still with us, and thank you for sharing your comments, and the council members as well. I think I'm the only council person who's been a member of the South Bend School Corporation. I was a member when the decision had to be made in regards to the location of Riley High School, and that was not a good experience, but was one when the community did come together that we were able to reach consensus. As we begin to look at public education, the historical history is so important, especially for South Bend, Indiana. As we begin to look at the out-migration of students, this did not happen overnight. As we begin to look at the corporation was built for 20,000 plus students. And so again, there are a lot of issues, a lot of challenges, but what is important, and I have to agree with Mrs. Simpson, we have some outstanding teachers, principals, custodial staff, the whole staff working to ensure that all students receive the very best education possible. And it's important for the council to begin to work very closely with the school corporation, the leadership, because our schools are so important to our neighborhoods. I can recall when we had neighborhood schools, all I had to do was walk down the street to go to elementary, and then we moved from one side of the town. I was able to even walk to high school. Those times are not the same. So again, I just think it's important that we embrace all education institutions within our community, but most of our students have been educated. Most of the leaders that we have in our community, they have been educated through our public schools. And so again, thank you for the resolution. It's a great beginning. And I would just, as other council members have stated, we have to go back into our various neighborhoods, our neighborhood associations, and other stakeholders and encourage them to come to these meetings and to be part of the solution and not sit on the outside looking in, because your time, your energy, and your thoughts are so important. This is our community, and if it's going to be a better community, it's going to take all of us, and education is critical. And so again, I thank you for giving me this opportunity to make those comments, and it's a great beginning.
Councilmember White, you know, one thing I want to impress upon you, since you did serve on the school board, I think people that don't show up, there's two reasons, right, or about three. But one of the things that people do not understand is what's happening. All we hear is about right-sizing schools, and I get that, right? But what is actually happening to your tax base, your local economy? I think that conversation makes more sense than just, you know, trying to get people to get involved, because they don't understand. I've been ringing this bell for the last 10 years or longer about school and city. We even passed some legislation on that back in 2009. I've been beating this horse, this drum. Thank God it was caught on. But I think people really need to hear about the tax implications, the well itself drying up, given what's happening. I think that makes more sense. Messaging, talked about that.
And I agree, because it's so comprehensive. It really impacts more than just, you know, the community or the neighborhoods. It, you know, it just has a larger impact that we look at, especially when we look at our urban school districts as well. So I appreciate your feedback.
And Clerk Jones, I have to apologize because you did signal to want to speak during the public, and I overlooked you. So I am sorry. I would go back to you because that was my oversight.
No problem. I was just going to say, first of all, this is a good conversation, and this is a good way to get the community involved and engaged because we all love our children, and we are all, particular in how we want them educated. I remember circumstance when I was a school board member, and we came, and this is how the council and the school board can work together on some issues that you might not even think. Mr. Inez has mentioned something about buildings, and some of the buildings are old, and I can attest to that. But we're still taking care of them. And I can remember coming to the council, it wasn't this council, it was a different council, in regard to wanting to tear down a building, and I think it was Marquette.
It was historical.
Yeah, it was Marquette. We wanted to tear it down, but the Historical Society did not want us to tear it down. And so it was voted against, and so the building is still empty, and the school corporation is still paying the bills for it. And that, over the years, that has been a significant amount of money when that just could have been eliminated. So those are some of the ways that some of the things that you can look at and work with and say, okay, that to me, that's a no-brainer, but to some people, I guess, buildings are important, but we have to look at what is it costing us in regard to looking at the taxes, looking at the bills, looking at all of that. So that is definitely a discussion that you all could have with the school board. I really appreciate the conversation being open so that people can recognize that there are ways that you all can work together to build a relationship in regard to educating our students, because at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones to take care of us. So we need to make sure that they get educated, and I do want to give a shout out to the teachers and the administrators because I know they work very hard.
Counselor Wax.
Thank you. I'm not going to repeat my comments because I don't think that would be helpful at this point. But while I won't be supporting this resolution for the reasons that I pointed out before, I do want to commend the sponsors for caring and having this conversation. I think this is a healthy conversation. I've had multiple private conversations with administration of the school corporation and some board members as to what some solutions might be. I supported thank you. I supported the referendum, and I want very much for the South Bend School Corporation to be successful, for sure in the long term. I don't know what the short-term answer. I commend them for I think going through this process slowly and methodically. I wish I knew the answer. There's some things that I'm confident that I know the answers, whether I do or not. This one, I'm confident that I have no idea what the answer is. But I appreciate this conversation. I do think that it's important, though, that as we have the conversation, we focus on what solutions are available and to recognizing the realities that we're dealing with. And that does not involve pointing the blame at other places, and nor does it try to pretend that we're not living in a system that right now has school choice. Like I expressed before, I'm a big fan of school choice, but whether you are or you're not, it's here. And this is a reality that the school corporation is going to have to figure out how to be successful with school choice. And I want them to be successful, and I hope that they will find a plan to be successful, and that's my wish, that they figure out a good solution to have long-term success.
Thank you. With that, no, I didn't. I think I asked if there anybody online. Yep, we already did that. At this time, the public portion is now closed.
Move for adoption.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk Jones, the roll, please.
Councilmember Wax.
Nay.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Tomas Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember Hammond.
Aye.
Vice President Niskoski.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember Warner.
Aye.
President McBride.
Aye.
8 ayes.
Thank you. Resolution 2304 has been adopted. Bills on first reading. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 03-23 a first reading?
Yes. 0323, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, and annexing to and bringing within the city limits of South Bend, Indiana, certain land located in German Township, contiguous therewith, Councilmanic District Number 1, for the southeast corner of Nips Parkway and Olive Road, South Bend, Indiana.
Thank you. I would like to entertain a motion that Bill 0323 is sent to Public Works and Property Vacation for second reading on March 27th, and for third reading on April 10th, 2023.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion's carried. Clerk Jones, will you please give Bill 04-23 a reading?
0423, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, approving a petition of the Advisory Board of Zoning Appeals for the property located at 1106 Portage Avenue, Councilmanic District Number 1, in the City of South Bend, Indiana.
Thank you. I would like to entertain a motion to send Bill 04-23 to ZNA for public hearing and third reading on March 13th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? The motion's carried. Clerk Jones, would you please give 05-23 a first reading?
0523, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, to vacate property that is part of Old Bartlett Street lying south of the new Bartlett Street roundabout between Michigan Avenue to the east and the vacated section of Main Street to the west. The second street to be vacated is that part of Old Bartlett Street lying south of the new Bartlett Street roundabout, lying east of Michigan Street and west of St. Joseph Street.
Thank you. I would like to entertain a motion to send Bill 05-23 to Public Works and Property Vacation and for public hearing and third reading on March 13th.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion's carried. Clerk Jones, please give 06-23 a first reading.
0623, first reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, amending maximum salary and wage of Executive Assistant Director of Special Projects for the City Clerk of South Bend, Indiana for the calendar year 2023.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion to send 0623 to Personnel and Finance for public hearing and third reading on March 13th.
So moved. Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion's carried. Unfinished business. I would just like the council to make sure that you check your emails and respond, because we have second interviews for the CRB director's position coming up. And the next step after those interviews will be the getting ready for the town hall for public input for drafting some of those questions. So please check your emails, because those invitations have gone out. Is there any other unfinished business from council?
Sure. I wasn't able to ask this question, and I'm not even asking a question at this point, I'm just making a comment. One thing that we noticed was a list of things that the mayor showed us during this presentation for us as it relates to public safety. Many of those highlights were, new things that have occurred. But one thing that I think that matches up not only with his presentation, but even with what happened with his resolution, I think that there needs to be also a number put to crime. I think one thing that we haven't done is paid attention to how crime has impacted our ability to grow here in the city as it relates to kids going to school corporation around here, or families interested in buying homes not buying homes because of the crime, or families leaving out of it because of the crime. There is a number that can be assessed and put next to crime, because it's a reality. And I just think that, if we're going to be, celebrating all the great ideas that may happen, one thing that I do know is that crime deters a lot of development, and stops a lot of people from putting down roots in South Bend.
Anyone else? At this time, I'll turn to new business. At this time, we will be at the privilege of the floor. Individuals who wish to address the council must state their name and residential address. Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes. The maximum time limit is 30 minutes for this portion. And if there are any topics raised during the privilege of the floor, the council president will make sure that the council member or the city clerk or administration will review the topics and respond following the next scheduled meeting. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. I'm Sue Kessler, 4022 Kennedy Drive. Okay. There wasn't an offering to comment after Mayor Mueller's presentation. I wanted to point out and question why the city shows $207 million in total debt, whereas the state of Indiana Gateway is showing $220 million of debt. That's a $13 million gap between what the city records are showing and what the state of Indiana shows as our total debt. I would have liked to have made it at the time right after the mayor, but there wasn't a public portion offered. Once again, and I've brought this up numerous times, particularly during the police budget, I've been requesting that we figure out the cost of each shooting. And for those of you that were on the council before, remember me bringing this up. Milwaukee figured out that a cost of a shooting is about $700,000 per shooting. When you figure out the 911 calls, the people that showed up, the investigations, the court system, the county jail, the victim impact, I'm not discounting that it's a very emotional thing. I know two grandmothers, close friends of mine, that had their grandchildren shot to death in this city. It's personal for me. But I also think when we're looking at the budget, we need to realize that crime is draining our budget. And this Milwaukee study was probably 6 or 8 years ago. We really should figure out how much the average cost of a shooting is. And if we show how much it costs, perhaps the public can get on board on doing preventive things that, aside from the human aspect, it's very costly, very, very costly. And so I would implore you to, once again, to, in your budget, request that it be figured out. I think Ken is the accountant for the police department. So there actually is an accountant who's dedicated to the police department who could probably figure out those averages of how much that cost. I'd like to reiterate on the cash reserves. It really concerns me to spend those down. As the mayor mentioned, it keeps our bond rating up. If our bond rating's up, our interest rates are lower. So there is a cost associated with spending down those cash reserves. I'd also like to remind all of you, I had 4 friends that had their houses flooded in the Triangle area. We are a river city. There is climate change. Most likely that's not the last of our floods. And we need to take into account major infrastructure costs should we have a flood again, which most certainly I think we will.
Time is guessing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
And as a disclaimer, I did not talk to Sue before she got up there about the crime.
No.
We did not have that conversation. Honest to God, we did not talk about that, but.
Sir? Sir, you want to speak? Thank you.
Christopher Huff, 1831 College Street, South Bend. 6 or 7 years ago, I stood before the council. 7 of you were not on the council at the time. You were my friend as you were. And I made it very clear that this council has ultimate oversight over what this administration does. And every single thing that this administration does, I don't care how much you like him, I don't care how much you like all the department directors, or if you don't like them at all. I expect each of you to be very skeptical of what they are proposing. Now, Mr. Mueller's presentation this evening, okay, that's fine, it's pretty standard. Lots of gaps, lots of gaps. And a couple of you picked up on it, which is great. But you better use your skeptical eye on all these people. Because as I mentioned a little while ago, no, I didn't mention it, but I'm going to reiterate it here. The things that you people do up here has a direct impact on this community, be it crime. And one of the things that I brought up several years ago, you want South Bend to be in a better position, and hence the school district to be in a better position, you get this crime rate under control. Obviously, that did not occur. What, did violent crime increase by a factor of 3 over the last 3 years? You should all know the answer to that right off the top of your head. Infrastructure, oh yeah, very light infrastructure program. He may think it's wonderful. It's not. It's woeful. And the First District Councilman should be able to talk about the condition of, let's say, Hamilton and Brookfield Street. Just the intersection, right? They don't even fill the check holes. And I could go on and on and on. Every single thing that this city does, city government does, through its executive and through you people, it all, the good and the bad both, is on your shoulders. You better be very skeptical, and I don't care who they are. I don't care what their politics are. I don't care where they were born or where they're from. They better do the right thing for my home community. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? Clerk Jones, do you see anyone in the virtual audience?
No, I don't see anyone in the virtual audience express an interest to speak. Privilege of the floor.
Thank you. There's no other business. We stand adjourned.